Summary of Freakonomics by Stephen D. Levitt and Stephen J. Dubner. There are 6 parts in the book. The writers look at a different social problem from an economic point of view in each chapter. The first, and longest, part is all about how rewards affect how people act. The writers say that people usually decide what to do based on what they want to get out of it. There are 3 main types of these incentives: economic incentives, moral incentives, doing the right thing, and social incentives, being praised or criticized by one's peers. Cheating in different situations is one of the best ways to figure out how rewards work. Every year, there are standardized tests in the Chicago public schools. All public school students must take these tests, and the results determine whether or not their teachers will get raises and jobs and whether or not they will be able to take certain classes. There is a clear financial reason for teachers to cheat on standardized tests, and in some years, about 5% of teachers did cheat. Sumo wrestling is another way people cheat. In 15-round sumo events, a wrestler's general standing in the wrestling world is determined by how many matches he or she wins. Studies have shown that an unusually high number of sumo wrestlers with a 7-7 record will beat opponents with an 8-6 record. This is likely because the wrestler with a record of 8-6 has been paid to throw the round. This way, both wrestlers will end the tournament with a winning record. Paul Feldman's work is the last example of someone who lied to get ahead. Feldman has made a good living by going to different places of work and bringing bagels to them. Feldman asks his workers to leave $1 for each bagel they eat on the job. Feldman is surprised that this honor system rarely causes him big problems, since almost everyone pays for their bagels instead of taking them. The writers look at the history of the Ku Klux Klan in the second part. In the American South, the Ku Klux Klan was a strong opponent of racial freedom for more than a century. The Klan is also a classic case of information asymmetry, which is when one person or group has more knowledge than another person or group. The Klansmen were in charge of a lot of private information. For example, they knew a lot of codes and secret handshakes. In a similar way, real estate agents have a secret language made up of code words that they use to talk to each other. One might think that real estate agents have a reason to sell their clients' homes for as much money as possible. But in fact, real estate agents' main goal is to sell more houses quickly. To speed things up, they will sometimes sell a house for less than it's worth. There are many other cases of unequal information. For example, most people lie about themselves when they're on a date or in a job interview. In the third part, the writers talk about how crack became so popular in the United States. In terms of money, drug gangs that sell crack are not that different from McDonald's franchises. People want to get into the crack business because it could make them money, just like any other business in America. Researchers met a drug dealer named J.T. in Chicago. He was the head of his franchise of the Black Disciples, a gang that sold crack, and made more than $100,000 per year. J.T. hired a lot of foot soldiers, whose job it was to sell crack on the south side of Chicago. Even though foot troops had a 1 in 4 chance of being killed, they still worked for J.T., and when they were killed, J.T. had no trouble finding eager replacements. Like artists who want to make it big in Hollywood, foot soldiers were ready to risk their lives to climb the ladder and become rich and powerful. The crack problem in the United States is also talked about in the chapter. In the United States, cocaine became very popular in the 1970s. Most people couldn't buy real cocaine, so they turned to crack cocaine, which was cheaper. Crack spread so much that gangs could make a lot of money selling it. But most of this money went to a small number of drug gang bosses. The foot soldiers took almost all of the risk and got very little of the earnings in return. In the fourth part, which is about how crime dropped a lot in the 1990s, the talk of American crime continues. In this chapter, the authors talk about 8 ideas about why crime dropped so much in the mid-1990s. People think that new police tactics, the death penalty, and new gun control laws are to blame. But the writers argue against these ideas by showing how they don't fit with the facts. The main reasons why crime rates are going down are more people being locked up, more police officers, and, perhaps most importantly, the effect of abortions. After the Roe v. Wade case in 1973, abortions were made legal in the United States. Because of this, many poor women had abortions after 1973 when they would have had unwanted children if they hadn't. Since unwanted children have an unusually high chance of growing up to be criminals, Roe v. Wade may have cut the number of children who grow up to be criminals by a large amount. This effect didn't become clear until the mid-1990s, when the first group born after Roe v. Wade was in its 20s. In the 5th chapter, we look at how parents affect their children and try to figure out if nature or culture is more important for a child's growth. Several studies show that genetics make up at least half of a parent's effect on a child. Even studies of school systems have shown that the high school a student goes to doesn't make much of a difference in how well they do in school, which would surprise many teachers. The writers look at 16 different things that are thought to affect how a child grows up. Overall, the authors find that parenting methods that involve specific actions, like taking a child to a museum, spanking the child, reading to the child every night, etc., have little to no effect on a child's development, while many parental qualities, like the parent's level of education, their age when they have children, etc., do have a clear effect on a child's development. Such information could show that a child's growth depends more on his or her genes than on what the parents do. In the 6th chapter, the writers look at how a child's name can affect how he or she grows up. It's clear that names can make people think less of others in real ways. For example, one study showed that a candidate with the stereotypically black name Deshaun Williams was much less likely to get a job interview than a candidate with the stereotypically white name Jake Williams, even though they both had the same resume. Some of the results of statistical studies of name trends are surprising. First, in the last 30 years, it's become more common for people in the black community to give themselves names that are distinctly black, or names that aren't likely to be found outside of the black community. This trend is the opposite of what was going on in the black community before the 1980s. This may be a sign of more race togetherness and pride among black people. Common names tend to trickle down from the top classes to the working classes, which is another important trend. Many names that were popular with upper-class families 40 years ago are now most popular with families from the working class. One can even guess with a good amount of confidence what the most popular baby names will be in 20 years by looking at what the most popular baby names are now among wealthy families. In the end, the writers make the important point that statistical analyses of child development, economic success, and other material measures are often not enough to understand how people really act. To show this, they look at two children. One grew up in a poor black neighborhood with a violent father, while the other grew up in a wealthy white neighborhood with loving parents. On paper, that is, in terms of money, it looked like the second child would have more life success than the first kid. But Roland Fryer, the first kid, grew up to be a bright Harvard economist and, by most people's standards, a very successful man. Ted Kaczynski, the second child, grew up to become the Unabomber. Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.